Hey everyone, welcome to the Margaret Fontana Media Podcast, where I talk about all things media, public relations, branding, and storytelling. And the reason why I emphasize on all of those things, because these are all things that I've been working on for the last 25 years in my career as someone who's I would call a seasoned media expert and in different capacities. So either as a content creator, a podcast host, a producer, marketing and branding executive. So there's been a lot of different ways that I've actually implemented a lot of what I talk about on all of my different podcast episodes. So today I want to talk about promoting your nonprofit and the importance of PR. And so the reason why I want to also talk about that topic is because, if you do follow me on social media, you'll know and see that I do lead a lot of different nonprofit initiatives for different organizations, and specifically as an executive director for a nonprofit here in New Jersey. So a lot of times we see that, a lot of nonprofits have to do a lot of fundraising, promote events, promote outreach, education, programs, and it's really not the easiest thing to do. And so the reason for producing this episode today, as a nonprofit leader and advocate, and I'm someone who's part of an organization that I feel are doing great things. Sometimes it's hard to get noticed, and so in this episode, I want to talk about some of the ways and some of the elements that you can use, some tactics you can use to really get your message out and understand why public relations, PR, really matters when you're talking about getting that awareness and reach out for your organization. So let's get like real deep into the promotions. The promotion, why PR and promotion matter the most for nonprofit. And so I would say first things first, having a strong mission is great, but sometimes it's just not enough. So you could be doing incredible work. You're really changing lives for people. You're creating that impact, as they say, which is really important. But if no one knows about it, your nonprofit really can't grow, and it really can't, amplify, let's say, all of the different things that you're trying to do, whether it's having an event, whether it's creating a program, whether it's attending events or getting people to come to you, or if you're even trying to raise funding. So there's so many pieces to it, but promotion and PR matter for your nonprofit. And so PR is really crucial because it helps build trust with the public. And a lot of times, if you don't have this, your messaging and awareness out in the community, or people haven't seen like what you're about, what you do, it creates a little bit of a disconnect for people to understand. So why you're asking for money, or why you're asking them to attend an event. So you really want to be able to create great relationships in the community of where you're serving, because that'll help really build the trust to your organization. And also for potential donors, let's say, the more that you interact and the more you engage in the community, and hopefully you're a good person running your organization. People can see through authenticity as well. So it's really an important, that's part of the PR. So it's like your morals, values, who you are as a leader running the organization, and how you interact and do business too, plays a really important part. You are the brand at times. So if you're a leader in an organization or you're an ambassador to an organization, you really want to always make sure you're putting your best foot forward. That falls under PR, believe it or not. So you want to make sure that those pieces are buttoned up. As far as still talking about PR and your nonprofit, and also if you're a leader, you want to also be considered a thought leader in your space. So meaning if I'm the executive director, I'm the CEO, whatever my title is, founder, you want to be able to have others perceive you for what you're, all the impact you're creating in the space, or all of the good work that you're doing in the space. So if someone says like, hey, who's a really great, this is PR related, if who's a really great, executive director running one of these organizations in the community, we need to do a media piece on, food, whatever. Let's say it's hunger in the community. So who is that person? You want to be able to be seen as someone who is advancing and really making a difference in the community. So that falls under that thought leader category. There's a lot of layers under thought leader, so I'm just mentioning it here, but that's not the full scope of thought leader when you hear that term. So a lot of times, PR, it really creates opportunities for media coverage, partnerships, and funding. Again, I mentioned funding again. So the more that your organization's name, the more that I always say the work's got to be seen. You got to be putting out the work in order for the potential donors to see, the potential investors to see, even anybody to see, just because that's what's, proving that you're out there really creating this authentic impact within the community. And then most importantly, you know, doing all of this work really ensures that your message and when we talk about the PR, it's really reaching the right audience, and it's inspiring people to take action, because I think that's ultimately what you want. What you want folks to do. You want people to either volunteer with your organization. You want potential donors to donate to your organization. You want other organizations to perhaps come to you and collaborate. And collaboration is actually a very important tool. So if you do collaborate with organizations and all of a sudden, there's more like activity and engagement, that really is something that's going to help, and then also could create great PR stories, which then you could pitch to other local media to kind of like get that encompassing, feeling of doing good in the community. So there's a lot of pieces there, but this is why PR is crucial to your nonprofit. That's kind of the summarization of that. So when we talk about PR, a well thought out PR strategy is really not only just about the press release, because, sometimes press releases are considered like traditional, a traditional process and how you get messaging out, which is wonderful. It still works. It's a great way to describe what's happening, to launch, initiatives, programs, events. It's great. But I think it's really important to continue telling the story even inside your press release. So it's about telling your story in a way that connects with people, but emotionally, and it compels them to support your cause. So if I'm launching a program and it's like very robotic and it's just like, oh, we're launching on May 5th and it's about this, this, and this. Okay, that's great. But what's the story behind it? We're launching this program because we know and we feel that it's going to impact the lives of people who are really searching for A, B, and C. So there has to be a story attached to the initiative in order to then, really create that press release that's going to connect with someone who says, wow, that's a really great initiative. That's a great story. Let me amplify that and put it out into the media, whether it's local media, print, digital, whatever might be like, the higher level for what you need. So part 2 of that are key PR strategies to promote your nonprofit. So we know PR is essential, but let's talk about how to effectively promote your nonprofit. So, and then some of those ways, again, we can go down this rabbit hole of PR because that's what I do on a day-to-day, but it's just really important when we're talking about the nonprofit world and how to really leverage a lot of this. So I mentioned you're crafting a compelling story. So your nonprofit story is what makes you stand out. You want to focus on impact-driven narratives. Excuse me. So who are you helping? How are you changing lives? It's what I just said, like, why is that initiative or that program going to be important? Will it save someone's life? I mean, it could, if depending on the type of nonprofit you are. So why should people care? So, using real stories and testimonials to bring your mission to life. And I love that. And sometimes it's really hard to get that. I would say that's probably the hardest thing to get, because obviously when you're working in nonprofit, sometimes if you're in an authentic situation, you never want to, expose any like true authenticity of, like, let's say, someone who's come to you for help. What, maybe your programs are helping like a vulnerable population or something like that. So you never want to, exploit any part of the authenticity, but there are ways to tastefully and gracefully and respectfully and to do that. And so I would say, be thoughtful when doing so, just because, we're trying hard to get the nonprofit mission and vision goals out there and get the donors and things, but sometimes you have to be a little sensitive to what's going on the ground, because if you are getting those real life stories, those are real life stories and about why you created that nonprofit or why that nonprofit is actually working. So moving on, we want to talk about leveraging media and press releases. So when I talk about that local, I'm talking about reaching out to local news outlets. Creating relationships with journalists is also very important. And unfortunately, nowadays, the turnaround on journalists working for publications is very high, meaning there's a turnaround. You're not going to get the same person working at the same publication that perhaps you reach out to a year ago. That's just the nature of PR and media right now. And so that's why it's always good to just have good relationships with people in general. And they're if you're working on the journalist Rolodex, this is where it's important. I said Rolodex, which dates me, but back in the day, we all had our Rolodex, with everybody like in the dial. I got to find mine and I'll show it to you next time. Again, so it's like crafting that compelling story, which was the first thing I mentioned, and then talking about leveraging media and press release. So reaching out to local news outlets, journalists, online publications, and you want to share those success stories that you have. You want to talk about your upcoming events, any groundbreaking initiatives. And again, this is great. A well-crafted press release can really help you actually land the media coverage and then expand the reach or the messaging of what it is you're trying to talk about. So when we talk about well-crafted press release, I think a lot of times every organization is different on how they produce their press release, what they include in their press release. But it goes back to those basic things that I learned in school, which is like the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And that's always really important. And nowadays, interactive. So if you have a video to accompany your press release, which would, further enhance or show what it is you're talking about, sometimes journalists will include that in their, like, let's say a digital publication. So there might be a press release and then they'll put in the video like as an embedded piece. But, you have to really make sure it's a good video that should accompany it. And, and then sometimes they put in images to go along with it. You always want to make sure your images are licensed images or that you own the image. Don't distribute an image if you don't own it or have permission to use it. And then you also have to make sure there's a credited. So if a photographer took a picture of a headshot of someone that you're promoting or someone who's going to be a guest speaker, let's say, you have to make sure that that's you have permission for that from the person whose photo that is. And those are like nitty-gritty details. That's like way in the weeds, but an important piece. So, and then part of PR, and I've done an episode around this, is PR and social media and how social media is really, really important, and how you show up on social media as, either a leader of the organization, or how you position and package the organization, plus leaders, plus the initiatives, plus your messaging. So you really want to make sure, platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, those are all great tools for your storytelling, but it's also a great place where you can engage with your community. So you want to make sure you're posting good visuals, meaning those photos, those interactive pieces. I always say quality over quantity. Don't post crappy images, videos, charts. Make sure everything looks good. Like, what would interest you if you're looking at it? Don't assume that you just have to hit that checklist and just like, oh, just post something on social media, just get it out there. It's really not attractive when things are messy. And so I would say that you should be using social media every day. You should be engaging with your community every day. Don't assume that people know or understand what you're posting. Full context on any post is very important. Make sure there's a call to action. There's a link. So if you're promoting your event, there should be a link. If you're promoting link, dates, time, just the basics. But also, um, you know, you don't want to assume that people understand the post that you're just posting, because here's what happens on all of these platforms now. I might be served your post, and then I never saw what you posted the day before, where you posted something. You're like, coming up this week, we're launching a new initiative that's going to help A, B, and C. Don't assume I saw that, because that may not have been served to me. Now, all of the platforms nowadays do not serve each post to every single follower for each platform. Each platform is very different, and some people may not have seen anything at all, even if you are following the page. It's just the way it is right now. So don't assume. And don't assume that I've seen or understand what the full context of your post is. So be completely inclusive on your posts. And inside language, meaning something that's inside language for your organization, or inside jokes or anything like that, should not be posted on social media, because, as I said, most people have no idea what that inside language is, because they're outside of the organization. And don't assume people are tech savvy. They might be on social media, it doesn't mean they're tech savvy. So you always have to be catering to everyone at all times. So just keep that in mind as you're engaging on social media and planning your social media. Again, consistency is going to be your friend when you're trying to promote anything PR related, event related, messaging, any of the mission, vision, goals, any of your strategic plan that's got to go out, has to be broken down and put into a content calendar. So if you have someone on your team who's handling your social media, it benefits them to create a content calendar, because then they can review it with the entire organization, even if your organization is like 3 people. That is the key to success, is looking at where we want to post, what we want to post, how we want to post it, and who do we want to appeal to, and why are we posting. So think about those things. I mean, social media and PR, it's a whole other episode. I've done other episodes on this, but it's important to talk about when we're talking about how you're going to promote your nonprofit. So another point I wanted to make, and this is really important because nowadays, everybody's kind of on this boat of, influencers and, what can an influencer and ambassador type person do for you? And like, what is that and who are they? So when you're talking about influencers and ambassadors, let's talk about the first part, which is influencers. So influencers are public figures, let's say, or people on social media who perhaps have large followings or micro followings, but they're like quality people that have, could align with you for your initiative. So if you're so let's say that something has to do with food and you're running a food event or like a food charity event or something, you want to collaborate with, let's say, food influencers. And that goes for every topic. It could be someone who's just like very news influencer driven, but also hyper local influencers are great, meaning people who are local to the area, who go to events locally, who are considered influencers, and who have folks following them. That's a good way to really make sure your messaging gets a little bit more amplified out on digital and social media when we're talking about PR. So it's always good, but I would vet, I fall along the side of make sure that that's also about quality, not quantity. So whether it's a local celebrity, a social media personality, or a community leader, because I do see a lot of people who are community leaders who are just like at every event, everywhere, take a million photos at every event, and could be good, could be bad. You have to decide if you want to include this type of person to amplify your message. So it falls in that category, and that's what we would throw into under influencers. And then when we talk about ambassadors, And this is something, I've done in multiple organizations, and it's a great formula. So bringing in folks who are ambassadors to the organization. So these could be volunteers. These are people who believe in the mission, your vision, the goal of the organization. They're willing to really share the messaging, share the events, and there's great value in creating ambassadors to your organization. And there's a lot under this category for influencers and ambassadors, but I wanted to mention it. But if you have questions about it, or you want to talk a little bit more about that, and look for ways to kind of develop that for your organization, please feel free to email me. Happy to talk about it. So the next thing we want to talk about is email marketing and newsletters. And this is something that I think a lot of people, I don't want to say ignore, but kind of put at the bottom of the list for nonprofit. And the truth is, your email marketing and newsletters are probably more valuable than social media. And the reason being, a lot of times I think it falls into demographics, it falls into direct messaging. And again, social media, you can't guarantee that everybody's seeing the messaging unless we pay to play, meaning I pay, some type of advertising cost on some of the social media platforms to make sure it's targeting people. But that's also not guaranteed. And that's the kind of the playing ground we fell into with social media nowadays. It could change, but that's kind of like where it's at right now. But email marketing and newsletters, I think, it keeps your supporters informed. It keeps everybody engaged with regular updates. You can share behind the scenes stories. You can do donor spotlights. You can do upcoming initiatives, events. You can make those announcements. You could take your press releases and actually just put them through there. It really makes your emails a little bit more personable, valuable, and you got to include some like action-driven kind of language. And I think this is where people, I know, like I'm looking at my phone, it's just easier to get an email, I think, than like actually go on social media and kind of engage. Like if I'm looking at an event, I'm on social media. I'm one of those people, obviously, like if you've been following me, you know that social media is one of my expertise, but you really got to work social media. So as someone who's running the social media, I know that I have to work double down on social media to make sure that my followers are seeing what I'm talking about, what I'm promoting. So, it really makes a difference if you have someone on your team who knows this whole arena, because it's important. This is where marketing and PR is probably one of the more important pieces of any nonprofit, because that's how your messaging is actually put out to the community. This is how people are aware of your community. So something to really think about when you're looking at resourcing and bringing on folks who can be part of your team. Marketing and PR, number one. So as we're still talking about, so email marketing and newsletters, I think, like I said, I feel are very valuable in my opinion. And then lastly, I think we want to engage our community. Again, it's like the best promotion often comes from word of mouth, right? So it's like during COVID, we switched over to this video first lifestyle, right? So now everything's video, and we conduct ourselves daily on Zoom calls, Microsoft Team calls, and this is how we interact. This is how we do business. This is how things are functioning, which is fine, and it works. But nothing beats going and being in person to an event and seeing people and talking to people, and people are like, oh, that's you. I always see this much of you. So now it gives full context on a person's tone, a person's, kind of credibility. So never, ever dismiss the fact that, the best promotion comes from word of mouth, and it comes from being in person. So, you can always make sure you're attending a good handful of events, just to keep up and keep that PR circle engaged. That's actually really important. So when you're engaging with the community, this is also where you can encourage volunteers, donors, and other folks to kind of understand what you're doing and what it is that your organization is all about. And then as you're doing all of these things, I think it's just important to talk about staying consistent And this is where you'll be able to look at whether or not all of your efforts are successful. And so, this would be what we would call measuring your success, right? That's always any true leader wants to know from anyone who works on the team, like, how are we measuring success? Like, what are we defining as success? So you can't improve something if you don't measure it, basically. So you always want to make sure that you set clear KPIs, for your PR efforts. You want to track your media mentions. You want to track what's happening on social media. You want to track website traffic, donor growth. You want to see if you go from 0 to 100, 100 to 0. Obviously, these are all important things. Ticket sales, are they being affected by how much or how less you're putting out from a messaging standpoint? All of these things have a lot to do with each other. And I think, again, I know under nonprofit in our world, resourcing is very difficult, only because, we're always working to kind of, partner and collaborate with folks who can donate. And so and I know it's overwhelming to actually run a PR and marketing initiative under your organization. And so sometimes it's like, it would be really wonderful if you could partner with a PR expert, someone who can help you really navigate the media landscape, craft a nice strategy that is really going to amplify your nonprofit. And so a lot of what I've done over many years is exactly this, right? It's helping these organizations, leading the organizations to really be able to tell their stories that create the impact. And so creating a positive impact, whether that actually physically happens within the work of the organization, and then be able to take that, what has happened, what we are actively working on, and then being able to position and package it over different PR tactics is really how you can succeed, by really making sure you're amplifying and making sure that you're promoting your nonprofit using all of these pieces of PR. So I hope this gave you some valuable insight into promoting your nonprofit and leveraging some of these PR tactics for your ultimate success. So if you're looking for any other guidance on PR, if you're looking for, some branding thoughts, strategy, you can always connect with me, Margaret, at margaretfontana.com. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. I did say a couple of episodes ago, and this is what I'm doing to really try and stick to my commitment and consistency, just because I've been so busy, but is really being able to share some of these nuggets of information and knowledge. This is my way of also contributing and putting things out into the universe for other folks who are looking for this type of information. So don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. Please leave a review. That would be wonderful. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. I mean, sometimes, I go to conferences and I go to different meetings and things, and people are always asking a lot of good questions, and there just aren't a lot of resources out there for PR and marketing under nonprofit. And, feel free to send me any kind of question, any feedback. I'm happy to address it. So until next time, thanks, guys, and hopefully we can explore a little bit more on the next episode. But if you have another topic, or you have something that you think is important to elaborate on that falls under, media, marketing, film, entertainment, lifestyle, I think I encompass all of that under my umbrella. So I look forward to it, and thanks so much.